Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Smith. I'm a physiotherapist, and I'm currently working in the Sickle Cell and Thalassaemia community pilot in North East London. I've been asked to come today to do a talk about physical activity and sickle cell disease. I will be basing this talk on the national guidelines published by the government in 2019. Lovely, thank you. I'm going to start with children first. And the first thing to say is that children can partake in activities, exercises. So if we have a look at the screen, we can see there are a number of different activities listed. So children will have no problem doing things like skipping, running, climbing, skating, climbing, using bikes on even ground, dancing, walking. That as a parent, you may want to have special consideration for things like swimming. So you may want to think about, is that very cold, and actually give this treadmill advice for the child, or actually the pools are okay in temperature, but actually they can't warm up very quickly. So then the facilities for them to get changed and dressed isn't particularly warm, and for them to kind of warm up quick isn't available. Further consideration needs to be made with things like sports, PE, and workouts. So the issue with these is that the person will be working, in some cases, at a high intensity level, which is not advised. So what we would advise for the people with sickle cell and the children is to work at moderate activity. What that looks like is that you should be able to hold a conversation, but you shouldn't be able to sing. So you will be able to have a short sentence conversation, but you shouldn't be so out of breath that you're unable to continue. So the child will be able to tell you that they feel a little bit out of breath, that their heart feels like they're racing, and that would be a way of you kind of urging that moderate amount of exercise that they're doing. The benefits of exercise, I think, for the human body, I think they're quite obvious. So for children, it's about improving coordination, it's about improving strength on muscles and bones. But actually, we need to think about things like getting a good night's sleep, so burning up that extra energy will help you to have a good night's sleep. Also things like social skills and building up your confidence. But we do need to have some considerations if children want to start a new activity. So as a parent, you're going to look at what the activity is. So it's not to say that children with sickle cell can't play sports like football, but you'll look at the team that they're going to join. So you'll say, this team, it's open access for everyone for all abilities. So therefore, you're going to know it's more likely they'll be working at a moderate level. Whereas if you're having a team that's having to have tryouts, then you know it's going to be a high skills team. So therefore, they're going to be operating at a higher level, which would be classed as intense, which would be inappropriate. So what you'd want to do is explain to the child that when you're running around in your activity, think about what you're feeling. Are you feeling pain? You need to stop. Are you feeling excessively breathless? You need to stop. Do you feel, those are the kind of things that you need to tell them in advance. If that's how you feel, you need to stop. Don't try and shake it off and just continue. It's a case of, let's stop, let's regroup. So there should come a time when the child says, actually, Mummy and Daddy, I've been doing this for a while. I feel really good. Can I increase this a little bit? And yes, they can, because their body has adapted to that level of exercise. You can gradually increase what they're doing. So you may find that you may say, okay, well, do you want to play football twice a week, you said? But you would monitor gradually. Maybe you wouldn't want them to do it twice a week, every week to start off, maybe do it every other week, and then monitor their progress. You'd also encourage them, when they're doing an activity, to have a rest between every 15 to 20 minutes, and that will allow them to hydrate, take some deep breaths, and kind of set themselves up. So this next slide actually applies to adults and children, and this is about things and looking at things that should be avoided, I guess. That's one way of putting it. So the first one is intense exercise. So that would be things like cross-country running and contact sports. Contact sports, not because of the contact. If you think about sports like rugby, people run very quickly, very intensely. So it's that kind of intense movement that we're trying to say, not great. Short bursts of intense exercise, short sprints as well. Prolonged exercise for more than 20 minutes without resting. So that's things like circuit training, high intensity exercise, interval training. I know some people say, well, I do HIIT and it's not a problem. The thing is, I would say, make sure you have gradually worked yourself up to that level, because it can be quite intense, those classes, and they don't give you much time to rest and then move on to the next exercise. It is pretty much, all right, move to the next one. So you have to be wary that you do need that chance to rest and rehydrate. Then we've got activities that would cause you to hold your breath for a period of time. So that's things like swimming underwater. Also, so swimming underwater and also lifting heavy weights. So that would be if you're doing maybe like a power lift and you're lifting very heavy weights up, you've stabilized your core, you're holding your breath to kind of maintain stability of the core. So we'd probably advise you to avoid heavy weightlifting. Exercise that would cause you to hyperventilate, please avoid. And if you're on holiday and the place is high humidity, before going out for a nice long walk, get acclimatized to the conditions in the area first for a few days, and then go out on a nice hike. We're not saying don't do it, but do it carefully. And the reason why we're giving this advice is that we know sickle cell blood cells are smaller in shape and cannot carry as much oxygen as the standard red blood cell. With high demand activities, the tissues and the organs have an increased oxygen demand. The sickle cells will release their oxygen, change their shape, and become more sticky, increasing the risk of a crisis. This is why frequent rest is advised to help you to reoxygenate the red blood cells and rehydrate as you sweat and lose fluid. We're going to be looking at adults now. So if you can see the infographic, you'll see that there is a section that says 150 minutes at moderate intensity level, and that's where we would advise adults living with sickle cell to be working at. Please avoid the 75-minute high intensities. So when we rely on kind of numbers, that actually equals 22 minutes of exercise a day. So the reason why we're so keen on people to exercise, to get into that habit, is because we know it reduces your risk of things like diabetes, cardiovascular disease. It can help with joint pain, back pain, and even depression. As you can see on the graphic, you can see you can build strength in the middle, and we advise people, all adults, to do strength exercises at least twice a week. And we know this is even more important with sickle cell disease is because your bone mineral density can be lower. So you have a sickling process, the blood gets blocked through the occlusion, the bone has less supply going into it, so we're losing some of the bone mineral. And that's why if you at least exercise twice a week, we know that you can keep your bone mineral density that level and you'll stop the loss. This is even more important if you're a woman post-menopausal age. We know the menopause effect in itself causes you to lose bone mineral density. So it's advisable, please try and add 2 days of strength-based exercises. So the type of things you can do, and I don't know if you've noticed that I keep using the word physical activity rather than exercise. We appreciate that everyone wants to do exercise. So we are trying to say you can do everyday activities. If you do it at an intensity that is slightly more challenging, that can be classified as exercise. So you can see that I've got gardening, so that's mowing, digging. You can do vacuuming, but it's vacuuming if you're doing things like lifting and moving furniture. A campaign that the government had a couple of years ago was getting off the bus stop early. So that's encouraging people to increase the amount of walking that they're doing on a daily basis. So eventually, your body will get used to exercise really well. And you'll start to find that you don't feel as tired as you did before when you first started. Your muscles don't feel as achy, which is a good thing. And actually, it's quite easy, which is great. It means you've plateaued. You've achieved that training effect to stop and you've plateaued. But actually, what your body needs to do to maintain strength is to continually be pushed. So this is not a resource in this. This is just some suggestions. So if you're interested in things like swimming and walking, what you can do is you can increase the time or the distance. but please avoid increasing it by doubling. So I don't think say, yeah, I walk to 10 minutes, I'm going to double it to 20 minutes, then I'm going to do 40 minutes. It's just too much. You need to do things in smaller increments. So if you increase it every 3 weeks by 5 minutes, or 5 laps, or 3 laps, so many weeks, if you do steady progress, you will find that you're able to maintain the training effect without triggering a crisis. If you're doing a dance class, then obviously the easiest one is you go to an advanced class, or you may want to do another beginner's class. You may not want the intensity of the advanced class. And if you're someone who enjoys going to the gym, don't forget that you should be increasing your weights every 3 to 6 weeks. You can decide whether you want to increase your repetitions that we do or increase the number of sets. But please remember, when you're exercising, please hydrate, rest at regular intervals, stop exercising when you feel exhausted, you have difficulty breathing, or experiencing pain. If you're finding you're doing a particular activity that's triggering a crisis for you, ideally, please stop. Find something else that doesn't trigger the crisis for you. There are some health issues for adults that do need to be considered, and the main one is a vascular necrosis. So as we know, the bone is a living organ and it has a blood supply. So during the crisis, the sickle cells become congested and blood supply can be cut off, which leads to deterioration of the bone and can cause a change in shape. So if you have a look at the image, you'll be able to see where it says unhealthy bone. The hip bone, that round circle where it's a bit grey, has changed shape slightly, versus the healthy bone, which has got that rather slightly more rounded shape. If you found a vascular necrosis, you will find that actually you'll feel pain at rest. You may have morning stiffness. You may notice that there's a deep pain within the joint. We know that a vascular necrosis can affect 20 to 50% of people over the age of 35. The most common areas are hips, shoulders, and knees. The risk factors are increased in age, you're a male, people who are obese, a history of pain, crisis, acute chest syndrome, and people with low bone mineral density. We'd advise a referral to physiotherapy, and that's because we can provide exercises to help you to improve the muscle strength around the joint, which will help improve your function. We can improve the function, and hopefully it will delay surgery for a while. We cannot prevent this avascular necrosis, but we can use exercise to help the blood circulate across that area. And in the last section of things to be mindful of are 3 conditions that they're managed the same way, but they are distinct entities. One is physical deconditioning, and this was that people who sickle cell crisis happen quite frequently. So they rest, they recover, they start going back to normal life, but they realise they've lost some of their ability. They have another crisis, they start to get back to normal life, and they realise they've even lost a little bit more. So it's a recurrent crisis, they prefer to keep losing a little bit of function. Then there is another condition called fatigue, and that's due to the reduced oxygen uptake by the sickle cells, and persons are likely to feel fatigued. And then the last one is persistent pain. Persistent pain is currently being studied, and it has been studied since I've been a physio student. And I'm saying that to say, with sickle cell, they're not really sure what the mechanism is. They think currently, and I'm saying currently, the thinking may change, that it's the recurrent crises more into persistent pain, and they don't really understand that mechanism. So I'm saying this now, but maybe 2 years' time, they've done further research and they've worked it out. But now that's what they think persistent pain is due to. So a way of managing persistent pain is to use a technique known as pacing. Pacing is a structured approach to gradually increasing your activity levels without causing a flare-up of pain. This helps to manage your energy levels and to reduce the boom and bust cycle. What I mean by boom and bust is that on a great day, you do everything because you've been waiting to do everything, and that thing's been really annoying you. Next day, you can't do anything because you're exhausted. And the next day, you don't feel so great. The next day, you don't feel so great. And then you've got energy again, you do everything. You want to avoid you getting into that cycle. So we get you to think about your energy being like a battery. You wake up in the morning, your battery's full. Now that's depending if you had a good night's sleep or not. So you woke up, you're doing your activities, and throughout the day, your energy levels will naturally deplete. When you're doing pacing, you take short, frequent breaks to prevent overactivity. You gradually increase the amount of activity you do over a long period of time, and then you break tasks down into smaller, more manageable parts. We do advise, if you're having a day that's not great, still reprioritize your day and still do cycling. So I'll tell you about one of the people that I've treated. They had they had a physical deconditioning, and they needed to go back and access the community. And one of the tasks that they needed to do was to get the person to stand up and stand up for a longer period of time. So I advised them to stand up, they're an artist, to paint for 5 minutes. So they painted for 5 minutes, they sat down for 10 minutes, they painted for 5 minutes, sat down for 10 minutes, painted for 5 minutes, sat down for 10 minutes, and then they stopped. And it's using that level of very low activity. I know it's a very low activity, but for that person, for their body, that's challenging. And over time now, they're able to access the community. So pacing does work. It is a slightly slower way of doing things, but you can get long-term benefits from it. And my last slide, sickle cell trait and physical activity. And just really to say, if you have sickle cell trait, you can take part in the national guidelines as they are written. I know there was some research done in the USA where they looked at people who passed away from sickle cell trait whilst doing exercising. And what they noticed is that there is a condition called exhaustional collapse. So when they read through the notes of these people, they noticed that heat was a factor, dehydration was a factor, high altitude, asthma, and whether the person had an illness. So it could be like you had a cold, cough that day, and you still decided to exercise. So what they noticed as signs and symptoms were the person reported feeling weak, they had aggressive pain in the muscle, they aggressively unsteady on their feet, they started slowly collapsing, and then they have had, some people had abdominal pain, chest tightness, and difficulty in breathing, but it wasn't as consistent as with the previous symptoms above. And what they found when they were looking at these medical records is it wasn't the sport itself that they were playing. So it wasn't the football, it wasn't the practice matches itself. It was the condition training that they took part in. So I don't have anyone who has ever watched condition training with people who are doing high level sports. It's very intense. There's been 1 hour, 1.5 hours of running, jumping, lifting heavy weights. It's very intensive. So if you look on our kind of coloured chart of exertion scale, when you're doing that kind of conditioning training, you are in the orange tail and the red tail. And it's that level of activity, which is why these people collapsed and unfortunately passed away. We know people can have sickle cell trait. They can safely exercise at levels 7 to 8 with no problem. The only advice that's given is if you stopped training for whatever reason for a couple of weeks, you're on a holiday, you are unwell, slowly get back into it. Start at levels 2 to 3 and gradually build yourself back into your levels of 7 and 8, and you should have no issues. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Yeah, we do. We've got 10 minutes. First question, you talked about, obviously, movement is a medicine, and you talked about physical activity, not exercise. So I know one friend of mine who has sickle cell, he played rugby, he's a very good guy, but he had to, as you said, be on the 7 level. But his joints now, his joints, hips especially. But then these gentle exercises, you could just give us advice something. I know something you have to give. Point one.
So really advice. Which say that probably you need to have an assessment with physiotherapists. It's not really advisable to give you generic advice, just because the reason for your hip pain could be different for everyone else. Someone may have AVN, someone may have arthritis, and somehow we would kind of address some of those things would be similar, but sometimes it would be different, the advice that we give. Sorry.
No problem, you're right. I've been told. Any questions? Sometimes I get the impression that a lot of people think now sickle cell trait is, doesn't have any impacts. And I have a lot of family members who have sickle cell trait, and I see a lot of their pain in some of what I have as a sickle cell sufferer. Now, stuff like what you've just shown, I wish I knew from school, because cross country, that wasn't good for me.
No, don't do it.
But at the time, I'm not aware of it. So in terms of the people who have sickle cell trait, I really think it needs to be more out there. Your levels of activity or whatever. Where
They need to be aware, but they can still participate, but they do need to be aware that there is also, I feel like sickle cell, there is a limit. So, because we're talking about this exertional collapse, it's those kind of signs of that achiness, that real aggressiveness, that like you just physically can't continue anymore. We know as a team that I work in, we're a pilot project with you, and we do talk about this. We've had people when we do awareness days in the community with the trait come and speak to us about the problems they're having. And so that unfortunately is bigger than us, but I am trying to go around to do as many talks, and that's the reason why I include traits, because I know I've had people who said, but actually when people trait exercise, they die. So I just wanted to explain to people, it's not exercising with trait per se, it was the condition training that is super intense at a very high level people don't do. So that, yeah.
So just to add to that, if you have the trait, then it's almost like saying you do have some of your blood cells don't carry as much oxygen.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying.
I'll be telling a lot of my family, don't be careful what you do.
Please do.
Right? It's true. I don't think I've got trait, and I've told I can't climb Kilimanjaro. So that's off my bucket. Next question. Anyone else? Question? I think there's go on. Yeah. Sorry. That's the question. More of a. I do it. Sorry, Pascal. On your first name. Jason. So I have sickle cell. My brother has to try it. Interesting listening to your conversation when he was younger. He played a lot of rugby. And when there were like very, very cold days, so it was like 0 degrees, -degrees, he would faint. His body would go into like a complete, like a computer would be switched off. Doof, faint. And we worked out that actually these conditions, you were dehydrated or you had late line diving forward and obviously like, but equally, I've grown up in mental sickle cell. And I think for me personally, when I was 10, 11, I had a crisis. From that point, the doctor was like, these are things you can't do. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, never go diving, and all these things. So I think to an extent, me personally, when someone tells me no, that's the point which I'm like, well, let's see about that. So equally,
Gradually doing safe things. So build yourself up gradually.
Yeah.
Over time, doing it slowly, gradually. Really see how your body's going to react to that. Don't just go through it. If your body's literally saying no, stop.
and yeah, absolutely. But I think there is also a stigma within friends I spoke to about sickle cell. That's like, I can't do this, I won't do that. But exactly as you're saying, knowing and being aware of what your personal body can do and will do, and being able to just that 1% extra, just try a little bit more, and it builds up. So yeah, absolutely, cast your family, but equally, there is part of us that's like, well, we just try a little bit more and build up to it. It works. Thank you. Okay. No.
I wanted to talk to you, Jaya. I wanted to talk to you about persistent pain. Because although I'm really glad that it's been discussed this evening, I think that that's something that I deal with. Also, it does come with like mobilities because I've also got osteoarthritis and I've got neuropathy, and so wondering whether it's a combination of nerve pain as well as physical bone pain as well. And I know that you lightly touched on it, but I would really like to hear your thoughts are about the way that it manifests. Wow.
I mean, I'm just a humble physiotherapist, it's only been in my role for a year, so I've actually learned a lot about sickle cell disease. And I'll be honest, I don't feel qualified to answer that question. I'm really sorry. I'll just have to be honest. I think it's multifactorial if you're asking me personally from what I've seen. So it's a combination of many things that create persistent pain. But then I'll have people who have got exactly the same issues and don't have persistent pain. So there is something more to it. I think there's been some theories. Is it kind of inflammatory process going on in the background? We don't know. We just don't know. So I'm so sorry, I don't feel qualified to speak about it.
Yes, I have a 20-year-old son who has sickle cell. He has decided he wants to go to the gym and get a membership, etc. He's never been to the gym before. He has process in his spine. And I'm just wondering if you've got any advice as to how he should
I don't know if there's in your area any something called exercise or referral that you can get from your GP.
Yeah, that's why he's going.
Yes.
So you're saying that because they'll get advice?
So what they should do is understand that there's limitations on what your son can do. So I don't know if you remember, I had a slide where I talked about going to the gym, kind of how many sets and how many reps you could do. So with someone like your son, I would want them to do more than one set, and I'll probably start at 8 reps, or maybe even 5 reps, just to see how they respond. So I'd probably start with a half an hour program. So we're doing none than a half an hour workout. We're going to do one set of each so what I understand 5 reps is suboptimal, but it's just to get an idea of how his body will react. Will it trigger a crisis, or will he be comfortable, and can he try that again? So that's what they should be telling him. They should be telling him, we'll start with we're not going to try and go for an hour, because you've not done this before. We're going to start smaller. We're going to start at the lower end of things, and we're going to build up and just to see how your body reacts and responds.
Thank you.